All right. Hello. Thank you for the introduction. I'll try not to disappoint, I guess. Yeah. So, actually, I was invited to talk about love, and to be honest, that was the very, very first time I'd ever thought about love conceptually. But when I actually started thinking about it, love is really, 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 really important. So I'm gonna warn you now. I'm gonna plug the book now. I'll probably plug it in the middle, and I'll definitely plug it at the end. But so the book is Back to Black: Retelling the Politics of Black Radicalism, or Retelling Black Radicalism in the 21st Century. And when I was thinking about it, love actually became one of the really important concepts in the book, because, and I'll try to explain. It's like three ways it's really important. One, I think, is one of the reasons I wrote the book and do the work on Black radicalism is because Black radicalism is probably the single most misunderstood political ideology of the 20th century, certainly one of the most misunderstood. And one of the ways that it's misunderstood, actually, is that it gets represented as the politics of hate, right? I mean, actually, I get called a hate teacher, hate preacher, hate. I get called a lot of hate. Apparently, hate Britain, I found out the other day. And hate really is the word that's most closely associated with this politics. So, if you think about Malcolm X is my favorite for many reasons. And this is kind of the fiery demagogue, hates white people, etc., 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 right? So, this politics is represented as this kind of hateful politics, angry black men with guns, when really this is not the politics of black radicalism. So, if we're going to understand love, how love operates, we first have to understand where this discussion of love within black radicalism. One of the reasons why the politics is so associated with hate or not love is actually because the rhetoric around it. So the rhetoric of people like Malcolm X, people like even Claudia Jones, the Garveys, is very much a rhetoric of critique, right? We don't like this. This system is bad. This system is evil. This system is devilish. This system is this, right? And more importantly, actually, the critiques the model of the civil rights movement, which is the model of love we're most comfortable with, right? So love is all-embracing. Love is forgiving. If you think about some of Martin Luther King's speeches around, we're going to overcome them with our capacity for love, right? Love is this kind of passive, semi-romantic notion that you can hold hands with your oppressor and this is somehow going to change the world, right? So there's a lot of anti-that rhetoric within black radical politics. Because what we're saying is that's nonsense, that doesn't make any sense, right? That's a crazy kind of logic. So in fact, I'll probably quote Malcolm X a lot, tends to happen. But one of Malcolm's famous speeches is when he's criticizing the March on Washington, which is if you want to see a spectacle of civil rights and love, it is the March on Washington, right? It's very, what's the word he uses? It's what? I'll just use Malcolm's words because they're the best words I've ever heard to describe this, and he calls it a picnic, right? A circus with clowns and all. A Hollywood production. Everybody's walking hand in hand, and he's really criticizing, he's saying, why is this love thy enemy approach, right? The idea that we can overcome them with our capacity for love. So Malcolm and the black radical movement more general is really using the politics of anger. So anger becomes is the emotion, the correct emotion. You should be angry. You should be hot. And to have a march which cools down the anger of the masses, that's just the wrong way to go about it. In fact, there's a whole story, if you want to read a book about it. The book's called The Speech by Gary Young, where he narrates how the March on Washington happened. And I'd heard this whole story from Malcolm X in the speech, Message to the Grassroots in '63, and hadn't really believed it, because you never know. Sometimes Malcolm can, you never know. People just make this over-exaggerating. He wasn't over-exaggerating at all. The march starts off as this kind of angry, it's grassroots. People are just going to go down to Washington and just see what happens, right? Shut it down. It was going to be a disobedient march, essentially. Not even a march, probably, someone else. And what happens is the president, the powers that be, they find out about the march and they go to the civil rights leaders and say, you got to stop it. This can't happen. If you do this, you won't get any legislation through Parliament, etc., etc. You got to stop. And their response is, we can't start it because we didn't. We can't stop it because we didn't start it. Right? This is not us. This is the streets. That's anger. And so what they do is they apply this kind of non-revolutionary kind of love to this. Right? Let's get involved. So they get funding. They get celebrities. They get the church involved. They really over determine this march to the point where you actually couldn't take your own placard to the March on Washington. If you ever see any pictures of like 2 placards, because they literally handed out placards to people and they went march back and forth very civilly. And there's a great video, if you Google it on Just Google, go into YouTube and put March on Washington, and it's 5-minute piece, which really is like Hollywood theatre. And that is kind of the civil rights love. Everybody's engaged, everybody's happy, you've got white people there, it's all nice, and you get legislation, right? I mean, you get the civil rights bill is just after this. So this is kind of and the reason that Malcolm's so mad is because it's not that Malcolm doesn't like white people, right? He's not mad because he hates white people. He's mad because when you do that, you cool down the march, you've cooled down the politics of it. You've taken away the anger which is righteous and which is necessary. And it really comes down to the fact that, yes, this kind of production of love and forgiveness and turning of the cheek, etc., working with your enemy gets you civil rights legislation, but what it does not get you is freedom. Right? This is the key difference with the civil rights and the radical tradition. The civil rights movement is based on the idea that deep down the system wants things to work, that the system loves all of us really, and the problem is that it just doesn't work properly. And if you fix it properly, it will work better and everybody will be happy. That's the civil rights goal, right? Radical, completely different. Sees that the system does not love black people. System hates black people. In fact, the system is based on the oppression of black people. And so to think that working with the system is going to produce for all black people is madness, right? Another Malcolm X quote, I'll probably stop after this. I've got some, I can quote other people, I promise. But Malcolm basically said, the system can no more provide freedom, justice, and equality for black people than a chicken can lay a duck egg, right? It's just not meant to do it, right? And so when Malcolm and the black radicals are arguing that anger is the appropriate emotion, that's what they're saying. You should be angry about this. This is an angry situation. And look at the statistics today, where things haven't really improved all that much for black people here, for black people in America, and certainly not for black people on the continent of Africa or anywhere else, right? 3 million children die in Southeast Africa per year for no good reason, other than capitalism, right? You should be angry. These statistics should anger you, right? So that's where the anger comes from. And also, that anger then does get turned onto black people who kind of embrace this other kind of love, right? Why did Malcolm X and Martin Luther King meet one time for literally 10 seconds? When they were about the same age, they were around about the same time, they did very similar things. You would think they'd had some kind of connection. They didn't meet because Malcolm essentially called King and Uncle Tom. The worst thing you can call a black person is Uncle Tom. Don't call a black person Uncle Tom. It's a really, really, really bad thing. It means you've sold out your people, right? And this is important because actually, again, this comes down to love. What he's saying is you're not caring for your people. When you do this, you're not caring for us. You're caring about yourself. And actually, to love your people means to do something very different. And this is where we get to the concept of revolutionary love, which really is at the heart of black radicalism. Because what revolutionary love is saying, look, this is what Huey P. Newton calls the undying love for the people, right? The love for all black people. White people, no, maybe not. White black people, this is the starting point, right? That we should, as a collective, as black people, as a global diaspora, we should love and care and feel for each other. That is our responsibility to each other, to the dead and the unborn. Actually, similar, you'll find this in many black feminist writings. The idea of loving blackness. So blackness as a thing that we should love and embrace and accept as something which is kind of metaphysical in a sense. And this is where I think the concept of love really comes in. Somebody did ask me once about, what's the, like, it sounds a bit religious. That's what that was. Russell Brand actually said, it sounds a bit religious. And I was like, I only just thinking about this, but that's not religion, it's love, right? It's something which you can't really explain, and it is kind of an emotional thing, but there is a connection to us that goes beyond us rationally as well, which is really important. And one of the things I argue in the book quite a lot is that this concept of blackness, very simply and very briefly, is that the color of my skin is not accidental, right? The color of my skin tells me a lot about my history, myself, my present, where I am, and puts me into a connection, a collective with other people who have the same color of skin, right? This connection to Africa is really important historically and presently, and that makes us into a diaspora. Now, that's not a rational, look, I can give you a rational argument for that, but it's not really a rational thing. There's something else, and that really is that revolutionary politics of love. That connection that goes beyond our place. Because actually, if I was going to take a historical materialist approach to this, there is absolutely no reason why I should care about the 3 million children who die in southern Africa per year. Literally no reason, right? I get paid a lot of money from the system that kills them, right? My life is basically fine because they are dead. right? I am in no different situation than most white people in this country, materially. In fact, I'm in a better situation than most white people in this country, materially. So if I was just to look at my my material location, this is not my struggle. It's nothing to do with me. And in fact, this is what makes blackness radical. And this is what makes this is what gives us an opportunity. Because for example, if we were all the same color, and my ancestors just happened to be enslaved in the Caribbean for whatever reason, but I would have become British by now. I would have disappeared. I would have forgotten. That memory disappears, right? And actually, the fact that I'm marked like this isn't a problem. It's not a bad thing. This is a good thing because it connects. It's a constant reminder of that trajectory and it's a choice. Many black people who don't make that choice. Many brown people who don't make that choice in the government today. I won't name names. Who don't choose that choice, right? So there's something else, and that's love, right? That we are making a commitment, a revolutionary commitment to all of us, right? And that's the thing that binds the whole thing together. The thing really doesn't work without that. So rather than being a politics of hate, it's the complete opposite, right? It is a politics of love, like just a different subject, I guess. And this is also a reminder that love is not always passive. Love is not always accommodating. Love is many other things, right? People kill for love, people die for love, people do many other things for love. And that's the kind of love at the heart of black radicalism. In fact, there's the piece where Huey Newton talks about it is called Revolutionary Suicide, a great book called Revolutionary Suicide. And he's talking about this love for the people. And this is where you get the idea that you would essentially put your life on the line for to be like, why do people do this? They don't do this because they hate, and they don't even do this because they're angry. I mean, this is really about love for the collective, and a very real level. Example, to come back to Malcolm again, I don't know why, I've got a lot of Malcolm in my head today, but there's a really, I guess it's kind of sad, but also tells you the politics of Malcolm X's death, right? So Malcolm basically knows he's going to be killed. At some point, he just becomes resigned to it. So Malcolm leaves the Nation of Islam, and after that is essentially a marked man. Now he could have taken a different trajectory. So when he comes out of the Nation of Islam, he starts to criticize the Nation of Islam very, very, very heavily. Because the Nation of Islam is a backwards, aggressive organization. Was then, and it is now. But he didn't have to do that, right? He could have said, look, just leave it. Nation be the nation, I'll be over here. But he actually felt a personal commitment to the people he had enrolled into the Nation of Islam. Before Malcolm joins the nation, there's like 10 people in the Nation of Islam. When he leaves the Nation of Islam, it's a massive organization. And he feels personally responsible to those people. That, again, what's that? That's love, right? He could have left it, moved on with his life, carried on. But no, he felt a connection to the people he talked to. Then he becomes a figure who's going to be killed. They tell him all the time, we're going to kill you, we're going to kill you. One of the reasons he spends so much of his time out of the country in the last 2 years, year and a half of his life, is because he knows he's safe. When he's in Ghana, when he's in he's safe. More importantly, his family are safe as well. So he spends so much time away from the country and is offered the chance to retire effectively. This is why he sees it as retire to Ghana. They say, look, we'll bring your whole family, everybody can come, you'll be safe, you'll be fine. And he turns it down. He says, no, can't do it. Why can't I do it? Because I have responsibilities in America. And because of those responsibilities, because I care, I have to go back to the States and do this work, right? Even though he knows he's going to die. When he gets to America, one of the times, so just before he gets killed, his house is firebombed by the Nation of Islam with cooperation from the police, and his family almost dies. He's very lucky that his whole family is not killed in this fire, right? And from that point, you can see very clearly, Malcolm basically just leaves his family alone, says, I'm going to die, and I'm going to try and die in the most individual, away from everybody way I possibly can. So on the day that he's assassinated, he parks 5 blocks away from the place and walks down the road. Almost like saying, just come and shoot me outside, because I don't want to be shot near people. He's on the stage when he gets shot. There's supposed to be other people on the stage, but he tells one of them, he says, no, you stay there, I'll just go out by myself. It's kind of like, literally just say, look, I'm going to die, take me here, but take me away from other people, right? So there's love's there in 2 ways. One, to put yourself in a situation, and 2, on a personal level, let's make sure not anybody else is killed, right? And it's kind of that is the basis, I guess, of the idea of revolutionary suicide. So love is always playing a part in all of those decisions. Now, really important, I know time-wise, I don't want to take too much time. How much time? Hello. Yeah. Really importantly, on that kind of, that's that kind of personal, practical level, but actually on the politics itself. And one of the reasons why we should stop demonizing radical politics is actually, when you think about, when we associate with this period of political history, we often think of violence and guns. The Black Panther Party would be the perfect example. But actually, if you looked at what most of the Black Panther Party did, it had nothing to do with violence or guns at all. It was a 60% female organisation. So 60% of the people in the Black Panther Party were women. And black women at leadership levels in different parts of the organisation. The work that the organisation did was primarily to produce a newspaper, which had a circulation of up to 100,000 in America at one point a week. They fed 50,000 children a week at one point. They also had thousands of people a week in health clinics, doing work which is caring work, right? I mean, actually some of the social services which are offered in America there, take some of the examples from the Panthers. And this historically goes back as well. The Universal Negro Improvement Association, the Garvey movement, was one of the first to offer widespread health visiting. Right, the Black Cross Nurses is one of the first health visiting organisations. So what you see if you look through the history of these organisations is that care on that level has always been fundamental to what they do. And why is that? Because you have, in the revolutionary love for the people, that means you have to look after the people, right? It's like a basic premise that you look after the people, rather than it being about prosecuting this war or this violence. And that actually, the heart of it is what's our responsibility? Our responsibility is to look after the people, care for the people, and then also to promote revolution, because revolution ultimately is the thing that actually cares after the people. But you see, there's a whole trajectory there of a different kind of politics. And now, really importantly, one of the things I do in the book quite a lot is separate out Black radicalism from other more destructive, I guess, less caring kind of forms of movements. So, for example, much of the Black nationalism, when we think about Black nationalism and the Nation of Islam, for example, and even as a figure, can I do this in two? Yeah, I can do it. Yeah, a woman. I'm sure you've heard of Eldridge Cleaver. Eldridge Cleaver is an odious, terrible figure who actually should never be mentioned in Black radical circles at all. I don't know seriously, but like, even if you talk to most people who were involved in the politics at the time, they can't stand Eldridge Cleaver. They were terrible. One of the reasons why Eldridge Cleaver was terrible is because he kind of embodies the kind of black macho, hyper masculine, let's go shoot police thing. Like, he was like, let's go shoot police. He wanted to go shoot police the whole time. Didn't believe that the Panthers' survival programs were really revolutionary. Like, real revolution is men picking up guns, right? That was what it was. And he was essentially kicked out of the party because of it, right? They told him, you got to go. This is not the politics of the Black Panther Party. The politics of the Black Panther Party is to provide for the people and also to provide revolution. And so you can see that when we start to revisit these politics and see what their actual traditions are, we can see there is a really important definition of love. And what we try to do is to bring that into the modern day. So the book it's obviously a book about the theory of Black radicalism, but it's also a blueprint. So we've started the Harambee Organisation of Black Unity in Birmingham. And the first thing we've said actually is that providing for the people has to be the very, very first thing that we do. Because this is the model that you do, right? It's not just about rhetoric, it is about care, right? On a basic level. And so the first project we started is the Marcus Garvey Education Centre. We're trying to raise some money to get that open, to do education stuff, adult education, youth education, as building on that, what does Black radical politics look like? So, again, it's a nice way to end, because we are selling the copies for that, right? So all the money from the book goes towards that project. So if you do want to get a book, you can commit an act of revolutionary love today. Right? It's £15 and even have a card machine, because capitalism is also caring. Apparently, anyway. So I guess that's what I really want to say: to revisit and to revise what love means, and to kind of give a revolutionary idea of love. That's it.
Question for Jonathan.
Yeah.
Time for a couple.
Thank you, Kehinde, for coming down. One thing I want to say is do that speech in a place that profited of slavery is an inspirational thing that you did. My question is based on this idea of revolutionary love and revolutionary suicide. To me, it seemed that in order to have revolutionary love, you have to have this revolutionary suicide. And for me, I work, as my own personal experience, I work in equality at the University of Birmingham. Mm-hmm. And I've noticed that a lot of people in high roles, I'm not going to mention any names, are afraid to actually speak about certain things and issues that are regarding equality, regarding race regardless. They want people that are in a low position to speak about it because they're afraid to jeopardize their jobs and careers, etc. And your example of Malcolm X really spoke out to me about how he went to Ghana and he went back. And it's like, is there a way to get out of this kind of, that's point the word, but kind of issue where we can still have revolutionary love, but without the revolutionary suicide? That's just my kind of
no. I mean, fundamentally, and this is the contradiction of all of this. And actually, look, the whole country was built on slavery. So I can go speak in Handsworth, and it's the same thing, right? Like, it's basically impossible to say anything in this country in a place that isn't built on slavery. But that's, I guess, another problem. But that does get to the point that it's easy for me to say that, but actually, what does that really mean in practice? Right? Actually, like I said, I get paid quite a lot of money, and what do I commit revolutionary suicide? Really? Probably not, right? And this is a conversation we always have about what is radical. My students are convinced, they try to convince me that I'm radical, and I'm telling them I ain't radical. Look, look where I am. Look where I am right now. Let's just be real. So there is a point where actually, and that definition of revolutionary love really is revolutionary suicide, which does mean giving up the things that you have to go and put yourself in service to the people. Which if I'm not, I would say even I'm not doing that fully, and it's very difficult to do that. Now, on the other hand, you have to eat, right? And there's no point. We have to be realistic about where we are in the situation we are in, and maybe we haven't got the organizational vehicles to do that. One of the reasons we started the organization was so that people can do that, right? Because those experiences, those opportunities don't really exist. So I think that's what's really important going forward, is building the opportunities to do that, which aren't necessarily there.
Yeah. Thank you.
We've got lots. Maybe just try to people that haven't asked so far today. We've got two back there. Yeah.
Do you want to take a couple?
Or take a few at once. Yeah. So you first. Yeah.
Thanks for that great talk. I suppose the question that I have is, I appreciate that the talk's based on your book and you were thinking of black radicalism, but so perhaps this hasn't come into it, but I was thinking of James Baldwin's The Fire Next Time, and I mean most of his literature was a surprise to me because it often writes about white people rather than black, or about sort of questions of the other from a relational point of view, and love seems to be very central. And The Fire Next Time struck me because I think it was written as a sort of letter to his nephew or something, and a sort of advice about how to cope with situations of a very, very difficult political crisis, and to hold on to love. And I just wondered if there is whether you could speak to that in terms of Baldwin's position in this kind of context, because it's not the Martin Luther King turn the other cheek. You know, it isn't this Gandhi thing of, you know, we will just sacrifice ourselves regardless. It's very conscious of anger and hate, but also, you know, the point that he seems to make is that actually it kind of destroys the person who hates. And that's why to love as a black person is actually about your own humanity. I just wondered if you could speak to that as a sort of, it's not Malcolm and it's not Martin. Yeah.
More?
Yeah.
So.
I talked, so I thought.
It's fine, everyone else has to.
So I was really sort of compelled by your notion of kind of the notion of solidarity being based on love as something which extends beyond us and enables us to see a sort of commonality with people that we could potentially sort of isolate ourselves from, if so inclined. And I couldn't really see how that could be used as an explanatory narrative for sort of understanding social movements. But I'm wondering, can you see a sort of politics of love as being kind of a recognition of a human condition and having that kind of solidarity, or do you think a politics of love that would sort of dilute it to such a degree that it would stop having a kind of political efficacy, I guess?
Two more?
Yeah, just take one. I'll just very briefly answer them. So.
Thank you for the talk. I was also going to ask about Baldwin, but I you mentioned the tradition of thinking about love and Black feminism, which is a big tradition,
Okay.
and I wonder if you could say something about the relationship between your kind of revolutionary love and people like June Jordan or Audre Lorde, where it's more, I mean, it's not exactly like that. It's about creating community, transforming the self, getting in touch with feelings that have been oppressed out of you, you know? So yeah, I'll be brief.
Yes, I guess I'm interested in the way that how you think about Malcolm X. Is he a supernatural figure in this narrative? Is he an exemplar? Is he, what kind of role he might play as the story gets told into the future? If you have any views about that. How Christ-like is he?
How Christ-like is Malcolm? All right. Yeah. No. So Baldwin's interesting. I think Baldwin's conception of love is closer to civil rights. I mean, Baldwin's a liberal, right? He's more ensconced in the civil rights movement, and it's not that kind of passive. Certainly not that in that really turn the other cheek passivity. But even the civil rights king and people like Ella Baker wouldn't have really embraced that either. So I think, but if you actually look at what he's saying, he's like, it still is that kind of our humanity is one of the reasons, one of the powers that Black people have, which is almost supernatural, is that our capacity to keep loving even when these things happen, and so you should hold on to it. And the contrast between love and hate is still kind of that misrepresentation of what Malcolm and the Black radicals stand for, which isn't really about hate, it's just love in a different way. So I don't think it's too dissimilar to what you'll find in civil rights more broadly, right? Which again is fine, it makes sense, I guess, but I don't think it's a radical version of love. Love as a human condition? No, certainly not. I think, honestly, and this is so it was only when I started reading Black radical thinkers, Black radicalism more broadly, that I had any interest in Palestine, for example, right? Aborigines, right? You kind of can't, once you understand through that framework, you just understand that racism doesn't just affect Black people, it affects everybody, right? It affects all of us. So certainly this is, and if you look at Pan-Africanism, Black radicalism, that has always been a politics which has talked about third world connections and movements more broadly. And one of the goals, I guess, has been, Black revolution, African revolution ends capitalism. That's good for everybody. So, well, not everybody, but it's good for everybody that's not white, at least. So it has that anyway. No, I think one of the things I would, I guess, concern about is that universalism it doesn't work. Like, it's not. It doesn't work ever. It doesn't work in terms of Europe. It doesn't work in terms of the third world even, right? So one of the key concepts of Black radicalism is Black independence. Like, we've seen people, like China, for example, was supposed to be the beacon for the third world, and China may end up being worse than Europe in Africa in the long term. It's not good, definitely not good at the minute. So I think independence is really important. So yes and no, I guess. But Black feminism, yeah, there's differences. There's definitely differences, but there's also really strong similarities. One, loving Blackness. I think that's really important. So saying that actually Blackness itself, there is something there to love. I think Black feminism helps Black radicalism, actually. I think really, so some of my strongest influences are Patricia Collins and Kimberly Crenshaw, because one of the readings through of Blackness and what that means has been highly, heavily masculine, to be honest about it. And so actually, when we say we're loving Black, we have to loving Blackness means loving all Black people. Like, you just can't put caveats in it or it don't work. The whole thing falls apart. So I think that's a really important, I want to say addition, but it is actually a really important addition, I think, to a lot of this theory of Black radicalism. And then some of the things are very similar. So Patricia Collins' ethic of personal accountability. I mean, that's the heart of it. I mean, that really is the heart of revolutionary love, Black feminist love, is that what makes people relate to you is that they know you care. And it's that, and you can't fake it. You literally can't fake it. People know because of how you act, how you are, and that kind of transcends everything. So I think there are similarities, and additions, benefits, certainly. And then Malcolm, I don't know, I just talk about Malcolm a lot. Malcolm for me represents the clearest explainer of Black radicalism, right? Clearest and funniest and to the pointest, and just like, and also, part of this is because Malcolm dies. If we're 100% honest, had Malcolm X not died, we'd probably say it was Uncle Tom Selleck, because that's what happens, right? So there is definitely, even in my telling as well, there is this, I wouldn't say Christ-like figure, but there certainly does take on supernatural. But I think if you actually look at Malcolm's philosophy, politics journey, it's not perfect either. Like, Malcolm's in the Nation of Islam for 13 years. The Nation of Islam is a terrible organization. So, and his gender politics, awful for that whole period, and get better in 64 or 65, but Malcolm's not finished by any means. I just say, like, for me, he represents somebody who's misunderstood, who represents politics, who's good, and on that issue of ethical personal accountability is actually unfaultable, literally unfaultable, right? So in terms of an exemplar in that sense, I'd say. But yeah, let's not Christ like anybody, I think. Okay.